which is very, very relevant to our lives, both in our social living as well as in our corporate existence. So to keep it short and not take too much time introducing things, let us straight away move to what I want to talk to you about. First of all, I'm someone who started my career as a criminal lawyer. I worked with Mr. C.H. Hanumantraya, so I have a good working knowledge of how criminal law works. And then I've also worked with constitutional lawyers, where a lot of important calls are taken in the court. Decisions are made which affect us. And in my understanding, most of the general public is not aware of what happens and what rights and what freedoms get affected. So that is something that I want to touch upon. And finally, I'm also a legal consultant for a fairly large company, and I travel for all sorts of disputes and all sorts of problems that arise within a company. So I can give you a fair overview of that as well. So moving on to the first point. First, excuse me. See, the importance of knowing the law is, once you know what the law is and how it affects your lives, a lot of things can change in your perspectives in terms of your engagement with society and with your employees or employers. That will be the first point. Then I'll be discussing with you the golden triangle in the Constitution of India. And what it is, I'll tell you. The relationship between an employee and an employer, that is something that is very important to know. And some points of general advice before I move on to what careers are available in law. So moving on to the first point. See, when you know the law, you know that you enjoy, as citizens of India or as citizens of the world at large, you have certain rights and certain freedoms without which a human existence in today's world is impossible. Curbing rights. If you want some examples, China as a country is very popular for curbing all sorts of rights and freedoms. So that is something that you can keep in mind. Without rights and without freedoms, it's impossible to live with dignity. That is something that you'll know about. Any situation that presents itself to you, be it at your workplace or anywhere else, be it on the road, be it at home, anything that arises, you will always think of the legal consequences before taking any action. How to pursue your rights and freedoms. Knowing what your rights and freedoms are and pursuing them are completely different, because not everybody is equipped to do it. Not everybody has the full knowledge and the potential to also take it forward. So that is something that you'll understand when you know the law, at least at a general level. What are your boundaries and restrictions? How far can you go in terms of how you behave, how you act, how you respond, how you initiate things? All of these, right from when you enter adulthood and your work, your friendships, your social lives, all of these things, where your boundaries are legally, it is very important to know that. So that is something that we can cover. And to be fair and honest, the practical applications today, the way the law is being used or abused in this day and age, may seem a little disheartening. But as a society, as a community, we should always aspire for the great ideals, the high ideals that were set forth when the Constitution itself was enacted and adopted. So this is the agenda, and I have some action points for all of you. It will be very important for all of you to be, constantly aware of these things. And this session is that. I'm sorry, something is buzzing. Sorry. Yeah, I have.
All the participants to be on mute, please.
Yes, I hope we can begin. So the first action point I have is always, when you read news, when you listen to news, get them from extremely credible sources. Now, how do you decide on what credibility is? Is the first thing I can tell you as a lawyer is avoid TV news. Do not get news from what the TV tells you, what the anchors sitting in studios tell you. That is not news. Do not do that. So where else do you get your news from? Live Law, Bar and Bench. These are two sites. In fact, they also have apps which constantly update you about what is happening in the higher judiciary. By higher judiciary, I mean the high courts. Each state has a high court, like Karnataka has the Karnataka High Court, and Maharashtra, Bombay High Court, Madras High Court, etc. And for the entire country, there is a Supreme Court. So when you subscribe to sites like Live Law and Bar and Bench, most of these important hearings and decisions, etc., are reported. You can either read the article in its entirety or a brief summary that is provided, which will keep you updated on what is happening. And the more you update yourself, the more you become curious. The curiosity in you increases, and the more you want to know about that. The more you know about that, take it from me, it is definitely more helpful to live your lives as citizens who are aware of what is happening around them. There is one video series presented by Dr. Faizan Mustafa. He's a very highly accomplished lawyer, a professor, an academic. He's the vice chancellor of National Academy for Legal Science and Research. It's in Hyderabad, Nalsar. It's one of the foremost universities we have in our country for law. So you can definitely, he presents them in Hindi and English, whichever you're comfortable with. And he has covered a lot of topics that I highly recommend you to go ahead and check them out. Yes, this is something that I don't know if most of you will do it, but there is one pocket constitution by the author P.M. Bakshi. When we started our journey as students in the law school, we were advised by our constitutional law professor to buy this. And, in this, you don't have to read the entire book, nor have you got to make any notes or anything of that sort. All you have to do is read Articles 14, Article 19, and Article 21. You will find them in the index. Open those pages. You'll find the article. It will be a short text, and then read the jurisprudence below it. The language is extremely simple, and only the most important points are highlighted. You will know what your rights and what your freedoms are in these three articles. So moving on from here, let us also keep this conversational. If anyone has any doubt or any question, before we move ahead, you can stop me and ask me if you have any clarifications that you want to ask. Okay, I'll take that as a no. Nobody has any questions. So we will move on to the next slide.
We have a question in the chat. Shall I read out to you or?
Yeah, I see it now. I see it now. Sorry. Live Law and Bar and Bench is only for the hearings in progress, but for general news, what do you suggest? Yes, you're right. Absolutely, Live Law and Bar and Bench is for the hearings and the decisions of the court and what the court has said. For general news, I would recommend newspapers. The Hindu is something that I would highly recommend, and to some extent, Indian Express. These are the two news sites that I would recommend to everyone here, along with sites like the. And if somebody wants, to follow YouTube or any other online news platform, then I would also recommend News Laundry, which gives you detailed reports on any critical situation in the country. So I hope that helps you. Thank you. We'll move on. So coming to the golden triangle in the Constitution of India, I hope this doesn't scare you, the term triangle, because the first thing that comes to mind is perhaps the Bermuda Triangle. But unlike that one, this is not going to swallow up anything. This is not going to take anything away from you. This triangle within the Constitution of India gives you things. It accords you things which, without which you cannot exist. You cannot live, as equal citizens in this country. And no matter which government, no matter which political party, no matter which kind of ruler, the first thing that you should all keep in mind is that before law, we are equal citizens. Um, you know, there is absolutely nothing within the core of our legal system that sets anyone apart from the other in terms of what is accorded to us. So let us move on. Like I mentioned to you before, Articles 14, 19, and 21. These are the three most important articles in terms of what they give and how they affect every piece of legislation that is passed. By legislation, I mean laws, Kanun rules that are enacted. Like, for example, everybody will be aware that there has been a beef ban that has been imposed in Karnataka. By beef ban, I mean all slaughter of cattle below the age of 13 is prohibited. And there is a special prohibition for cows. There is absolutely no way you can slaughter a cow, irrespective of what age it is at. Now, when this legislation was passed, a lot of challenges to it by way of writ petitions have been filed before the Karnataka High Court. Now, the first things that they touch are these three articles: Article 14, Article 19, and Article 21. Now, what are these articles? Now, these, like I have mentioned to you, they enshrine basic rights for everyone to live with absolute dignity. Now, you see that I've beaded these articles in a golden thread, because this thread is where it is like an examination where every law has to pass through it and successfully pass through it. Now, how does it pass? It is left to the judges to decide whether any law, any piece of law or rules or regulations are not in contravention or in conflict with these three articles. That is something that is to be kept in mind. Now, this golden thread was invoked in a lot of challenges recently, but a couple of them come to mind very quickly, because I'm sure they must have also been in your minds, when they happened. That is the Citizenship Amendment Act, the CAA-NRC issue that happened in 2019. The challenges, the legal challenges that were filed, invoked this golden triangle as the touchstone at which the Citizenship Amendment Act of 2019 failed. Then the Aadhaar program, whether it affected our rights to privacy, whether we should give up all our biometric data, our daily data on Aadhaar, and whether Aadhaar should be mandatory for every scheme, every program in the country. That was challenged before the Supreme Court. And again, this golden triangle was invoked. And most recently, again, the Sabarimala issue, the Haji Ali Dargah issue, where women, are they allowed to enter? Are they not allowed to enter? Again, these three articles were invoked in those challenges. Now, please keep in mind that these articles cannot be invoked against a private person. Let us say you have an issue with me. We are neighbors, and my house somehow obstructs your house, or there is something that I have done to affect you. That is not your constitutional right that is being violated. If somebody wanted to say something. Okay. Then you only have your civil rights which are affected. So the remedy for you lies before the civil court, and not before any high court or Supreme Court, where you invoke Article 14, 19, and 21. This golden triangle specifically is invoked when it is the state and the government and the persons in power who are doing something to you, in their official capacity can this be invoked. And these examples, I think, serve you to explain what I mean exactly. This is not something which can be invoked against a private party. This triangle can only be invoked against state action. So I see somebody has. Yes, I can throw some light on CAA if time permits later on. I think uh, let's keep 10 minutes for it at the end, and I'll give you some update on that. So moving on to the first uh, article that I want to discuss in this. And before I do, I want you to look at this image in the bottom uh, corner of your screen, the bottom right corner. You see, this is pretty famous in terms of how equity and equality, etc., is explained. But you can see one thing here. So there are three boys who are trying to watch a game of cricket or baseball, perhaps, and the persons who have organized that have given them three boxes to stand on. Now they've been treated fairly. Each one of them has gotten one box to stand upon and watch the game. But as you can see that there are certain disabilities with each of them. And one boy is extremely tall, the other one is of average height, the other one is extremely short. Now, despite you treating them fairly and equally, they're still not attaining their objective. They're not able to watch the game clearly, the second and the third boy. So what is treating everyone with equality properly mean? It means treating unequals differently. These three are not equal in terms of what is being done to them before the law. So if somebody, for example, to bring it into perspective in Indian law, is from an extremely backward class, economically, socially, there is a history of that person being an OBC, that person has to be treated in terms of certain special protections, special schemes, etc., that should be made available to them. And that is how that person can attain their full potential and live with their objectives in the society. That is where reservations come in mind. So the first thing Article 14 says is that the state shall not deny to any person equality before the law or equal protection of the laws within the territory of India. Now, this is a concept that has been taken from the rulers who ruled us for over 200 odd years, is that the rule of law as a concept, as something that was put on paper, was developed in England. And this one sentence completely encapsulates that. So no one is above the law. Everyone is equal before the law, be it the Prime Minister of India or anyone who does, the most menial of tasks. They're both equal before the law. The second point is that no person in India can be subjected to harsh, uncivilized, or discriminatory treatment by the state. Now, this is something that you should always keep in mind. These rights are only from the state that you can claim if they are affecting you. So they cannot, the system of monarchy is what is derided here. You cannot talk, or you cannot behave, or you cannot impose on any one person extremely harsh discriminatory punishment. And for the same point, you cannot treat somebody else in a different manner. There has to be some scale, and people have to be treated on that scale in a fair manner. What is arbitrariness? The state cannot exercise powers arbitrarily. This used to happen in the feudal system. There used to be a feudal lord, zamindars, if you remember. They used to own hundreds of thousands of acres, and people used to work on their lands, and they could do whatever. They could collect taxes, they could take their harvest, they could do anything. So that feudal system, and if one zamindar or one mansabdar is more powerful than the other, then there used to be attacks, there used to be conquest of neighboring feudal lords' lands. And this arbitrary system of one person holding power and acting in any way that he sees fit is extremely arbitrary. Now let us transpose that to modern society. There are sub-collectors, there are district collectors, there are IPS officers, etc. Now, these people represent the state. They sit on their chairs, they wear their uniform, and they hold those posts as representatives of the state. Now, the state, a collector cannot behave in an arbitrary manner, be it with the villagers, be it between a dispute between two farmers. He has to take calls in an extremely fair manner by hearing all sides. This legal maxim that you see in the bracket, audi alterum partem, means audi is audible. Hear the other side, hear both sides. Always take a call keeping all perspectives in mind. That is what the state is mandated to do. So but as I said earlier, that there is reasonable classification that can be exercised. The state can exercise reasonable classification in terms of treating unequals differently and equals similarly, just as I explained with that image with the three boys being given the boxes. This in gist is the concept under Article 14. Every year there are multiple judgments of the Supreme Court and our high courts which cover this article on various points, be it unequal pay, be it about gender discrimination, be it about discrimination on age, be it about discrimination on ethnicity, religion. All of these are covered under Article 14. So I hope this at least throws some light on equality. The next point is, I'm sure, fairly now covered every day. If people are, aware on social media, everybody is, talking about what free speech is, what freedom of expression is, etc. So, what is the law that covers here, and where do we derive these rights? Is from Article 19 of the Constitution. What does it say? All citizens shall have the right to freedom. Now, if you can see how it has been distinguished, you have the right to exercise your freedom. So I am free to exercise my hands, in any manner I want. I can move them. I have that freedom. But do I have the right to move it and hit somebody else? No, I don't. So that is the right. The right to free speech and expression has been given to us. To assemble peacefully, and you cannot carry any arms. To form associations, unions, cooperative societies, I'm sorry. To move freely throughout the territory of India, to reside and settle in any part of India, and to practice any profession or to carry on any occupation, trade, or business. Now, one thing that should be kept in mind is these freedoms and these rights are not absolute. There can be restrictions that can be imposed. Those are called, reasonable restrictions that has been provided in the article, in the sub-article 19 subclause 2. So coming to the first one, what is freedom of speech and expression? Is again, it is governed, with the rider that you cannot speak, you cannot say anything that affects the unity and integrity of the nation. You cannot do that. And though you are free to criticize any private individual, that person has rights under civil law, under criminal law, to initiate any prosecution or file a civil suit for damages against you for defamation, etc. To assemble peaceably, this is where your right to protest is derived from. A combination of Article 19(1)(a), that is freedom of speech and expression, and the your right to assemble peaceably and without arms, is something that gives you the right to protest. And right to protest, right to dissent is something that is fundamental. That is why, the rights that have been accorded to us in the Constitution, including Article 14, Article 19, or Article 21, these are called fundamental rights. These are absolutely basic human rights. And all of these rights, every right, I'm only going to touch on 3 rights which are most important, but there are a lot of other rights, including right to practice your religion, propagate it, etc. All of these are also covered in the Charter of the United Nations, the UDHR, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was adopted in 1948, lists all of these rights. The third one that we come to here, to form associations or unions or cooperative societies, it is fairly clear. to move freely throughout the territory of India, except if the government says that X place is unsafe or X place is a conflict zone, you cannot go there. Yes, that is a reasonable restriction. To reside and settle in any part of the territory of India, this again is subject to a lot of controversy, a lot of other laws. For example, one cannot purchase property in Himachal Pradesh, one cannot purchase property in Mizoram. These are all, accorded special rights. These areas are accorded special rights because those people, the ethnicity, the tribal connection that they have there, and the land and resources, etc., are supposed to be extremely valuable. So not any person is allowed to go there and settle. And coming to the last one, the one that is omitted is the right of somebody being free to acquire and hold land or property that was taken away during Mrs. Gandhi's time in 1978, because people, the haves, the people who had the money and the power were the ones who could hold property, and the rest of the people were not being given that right at a practicable level. So that is why that was omitted. And to practice any profession or to carry on any occupation, trade, or business, again, it comes with a rider that none of this should be declared illegal by the law. For example, somebody may be a drug trader, drug peddler. Now, obviously, that is something that is prohibited by law. Though he has a right to practice any trade or business, it cannot be in conflict with law. Human trafficking, child trafficking, pornography, drug trading, or even coming to the white collar crimes, shorting the stock market, insider trading, all of these things are against. Sorry. We'll move to the next article, Article 21. Now, this is very, very interesting. I hope I'm not boring anyone. And so this is where this is called the heart of the Constitution. Without this, the Constitution does not exist, so to speak. No person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty except according to procedure established by law. Now, what exactly does this mean? See, without there being personal liberty, there can be no life. You can be free but in chains if you do not have personal liberty. Somebody has written something. Thank you. So, no person shall be deprived of his life. That is, see, not just death. That this, if you just break it down, no person shall be deprived of his life, okay, or personal liberty, except according to procedure established by law. That means there is life and there is personal liberty. You can shoot someone, you can kill someone, you can hang someone, you can impose punishment, etc. But you have to do it after following the procedure that is established by law. That is what, in brief, this article means. Now, this, like I said, is the heart of the Constitution. It elevates the dignity of human life from mere animal existence. See, just eating food, surviving is not life. That is a mere existence as a Homo sapien. But as a human, you have to live with certain dignity, certain privilege that is accorded to you, and you have to exercise that. And that is when you can live as a human being. Now, what exactly is procedure established by law? Let us say somebody is arrested for stealing a watch from somebody else, and a complaint is filed, a trial is held, and the punishment is imposed. Can the police himself do it? Can the policeman sitting there arrest the person, recover the watch from him, and say, yes, you are guilty, I'm going to shoot you? No, that is not something that the policeman can do. The policeman can only investigate, file a report with the court. The court has to go through the report, hear both sides, audi alterum partem, like I said, come to a conclusion that yes, there has been a theft that has occurred. This person is the one who has done it, and the person who has been affected has his rights taken away. So the state must return the watch to him, and certain punishment should be imposed on this person. Now, can that punishment be death? Can that be life imprisonment? Can that be, let's say, forfeiture of all property that person holds? No, it should be proportionate to the crime, and it should be under the law that has been prescribed. So that is where the law, the procedure that is established must be just, fair, and reasonable. And it should not affect either Article 19 or Article 14. Now, what are principles of natural justice that arise from here? Now, you see, without going into too much detail on this, I'm sure when I explain what this means, you will recollect what has happened in the last year or so. Natural justice is two aspects exist. Even if you went back, let's say 2000 years, before Christ, let us say, even before Christ, during the Roman era, the natural justice principle is that before arriving at a decision as a person of power, you should always exercise two things. One, you should always hear all sides. And the second one is, that is nemo debe esse jude in causa sua. This means you should never sit in judgment of your own cause. You, let us say, being a judge of the country, of any high court or a Supreme Court, etc., cannot sit in judgment of, let's say, if a woman accuses you of sexual harassment, you cannot sit and say, yes, whether or not I committed sexual harassment, let us check. You cannot do that, because this violates, natural justice. You are a person who has been accused of X, Y, Z. You have to subject yourself to fair and impartial hearing before an unbiased and an impartial third party. By party, I mean, again, an organ of the state, that is this judiciary. So you have to subject yourself. You cannot sit in your own judgment. That is what these two principles of natural justice are, which arise out of Article 21, because we are discussing fair procedure. Right. What are the rights that are, that have been, no law, no article of the Constitution, or no special rule or regulation is made to cover these these rights that I am going to talk to you about now. You have the right to live with human dignity, right? You have the right to livelihood. No special law exists to accord you livelihood. You have a right to shelter, a right to privacy, to health, to have a pollution-free environment. There have been hundreds of cases filed before the high courts and the Supreme Court where your right to live in a pollution-free environment has been held of great import. There is one gentleman by name MC Mehta who has filed and worked on this tremendously. He's a great environmental lawyer, and he's the one who has sort of put this into practice. So if a company is polluting a stream that from which water is fed to your house, then your right to live in a pollution free environment is affected under Article 21. You can approach the court and say that my right to live in a pollution free environment has been affected by X person, and this needs to be set right. And these kinds of petitions are called PILs. I'm sure all of you have heard of those. That is public interest litigation, where one person or one organization or one association approaches the court and files a case, a petition, which seeks to enhance the lives of an infinite number of others. So that is something that is called PIL, which again is derived out of Article 21. The PIL jurisprudence, public interest litigation jurisprudence, comes out of Article 21. Rights of imams to emoluments. This had never been legislated. No law, rule, etc. had been passed. Who can a person file a complaint with when accused by individuals of another country? I think I need some more context there. I'll maybe speak to you at the end of the session. We can cover this, no problem. Coming to the rights of imams to emoluments, again, masjids and dini daras, etc. They would set whatever was feasible to them, or not pay them also, saying that service to the religion does not need you to be paid for it. So again, a right of the imams for receiving emoluments was recognized under this article. Rights of prisoners in jail, legal aid, right to speedy trials. If somebody is accused of something, be it anything heinous, be it anything simple, that person has a right to speedy trial. And a number of judgments again decide on this. Anything that goes beyond 6 months, 1 year, his right is affected. If he is in jail, that person has to be released on bail, etc., etc. Then again, right to education was introduced in 2009, where persons up to the age of 14 years had a right to free education. The RTE principle that was made was under this article, the sub-article 21A, which gave a right to education prime importance. So now, after speaking on all of these things, I hope you have a fair idea of what and what freedoms you enjoy. So here, why I have titled this as employee-employer relationships is because I do not want to go, technically into labor law, labor codes, because the coming months we are going to have a totally new set of labor jurisprudence. These are the 4 labor codes that are being passed. Let them come into existence. A lot of things are going to change. Perhaps then we can have a separate session on labor codes. Now, coming to employer-employee relationships, I have a list of do's and don'ts, which you can call the core principles of existence in a employee-employer setup. The first thing that I want to talk to you about is when you join an organization, or when you are reviewing that organization, read all charters and policies of that organization during the interview process. Right? Right at the stages of the interview, you should know what this company has. Um, you know, just give me one moment, please. So the first thing that should be done is a reading of all charters and policies, which is absolutely important for you to know what kind of an organization that you are entering into. And on the employer's side, it is absolutely essential to prescribe charters and policies that cover a range of topics, from leaves to harassment at work to discrimination, policy of inclusion, to what is the policy on insurance, on food, on travel, on commuting. All of these, there should be a policy. Let it be even 2 or 3 pages that each person should be made aware of. When you read these charters and policies, you will always have a doubt, a question, a clarification that you would need to ask. And trust me, during the interview process, if you have read the policies and the charters and raised questions at the right stage, that is only going to enhance your chances of getting that position, whatever position you have applied for. And it will show you to be a very responsible and a very initiative oriented employee that is seeking employment with such a company. Yes, if you are a manager, if you are a supervisor, please take extra precautions, extra care to even take away from people that they may have prejudices, they may have preconceived notions that there is going to be some discrimination. Please take adequate care that no discrimination is of any sort is displayed against any person, be it a man, woman, old man, young boy. No one should feel discriminated for what they are. That is absolutely essential. Yes. And if you still feel, or if there is any event or an incident that happens that makes you feel discriminated against, always before you escalate it with your human resources department, please consult with a well-equipped lawyer who can guide you on what needs to be done. Or if there is a legal department within your company and you have access to the legal department, please raise a query with them before raising it with HR. That is absolutely important. that you understand what rights are available with you. No, but that is impossible that an in-house counsel, a company counsel will give you fair and impartial advice, because that counsel has to keep the company's interests at large uh, at heart. So I would advise you to consult with a good lawyer before escalating it. It is just like going to a doctor, a physician, before, let's say, you feel the need to have a surgery. It is still important that you consult with a physician, and then you escalate it with your human resources department. And this is something that I have to put it here, because in the last few years that I have seen people join companies or sign documents, nobody reads anything, nobody asks for any clarification, nobody takes a view on the future consequences of what I'm signing. It is absolutely crucial that you don't sign away anything. See, one thing that you need, all of us need to understand, is that the constitutional rights that are available to us cannot be waived. The right to equality, the right to freedom of speech, expression, the right to life, etc., cannot be waived. We cannot waive them and say, I don't want the right to freedom of speech and expression, I don't want the right to life. That cannot be waived. But what can be waived are civil rights. Civil rights available to you under the Contract Act. They are available to you under the labor codes. If any employee is willing to give up, etc., etc., then such things you have to know. Unless you give them up, they cannot be taken away from you. So whatever you sign, no matter how trivial it seems, always read it thoroughly, ask for time, say that you need a copy, read it at home, discuss it with your elders. If need arises, always consult with a lawyer, and then go ahead and sign it. That is something that is absolutely important. Now, I want to come to something that is, very, very important. Three topics, three issues that I'm going to discuss, which everywhere, every company, every organization, every person may have faced one or more of these issues. The first one being termination, right? Termination for non-performance. If your non-performance has been documented, is impossible to beat. If I, as an employer, fire someone for non-performance, if I terminate his services for non-performance, that person challenging it before the court is going to be extremely difficult, because the court generally sides with the employer, saying that somebody who, I am sorry if there is some noise in the background. There is, uh, maybe we can wait for a minute.
It's okay. Now we can proceed.
Right. So this documented non-performance is always a sword that hangs over each employee's head. Please be aware of this, that if a company terminates your employment for non-performance, then that is something which is a big hurdle. It is generally not crossed. The courts generally don't side with the employee. Now here I'm saying courts. See, when you are terminated, when your services are terminated from the employer's side, the only option available to you is approach a lawyer and perhaps consider filing a civil suit, or even a labor case where you ask for reinstatement and even damages for the salary that has been not paid for you over the last few months, etc. Now, in cases of non-performance, please go with a rider that it is almost impossible to convince the court that your performance was at par, when people who are assessing you say it is not so. Now, there is another way of termination for cause. Now, what is cause? Each of your companies will have something called standing orders, right? Or any other policy or any other charter where you have been asked to behave in a certain way. You cannot shout at your managers, your supervisors, your subordinates, your equals. You cannot behave in a rude manner, arrogant manner. You cannot be XYZ. You cannot, there may be a list of things that you are prohibited. You cannot harass someone. You cannot eve tease. You cannot treat your female colleagues in any way that threatens their sort of work atmosphere. All of those things are extremely important. And if you are terminated for cause, then it cannot just be a letter which will terminate your employment. There will have to be a domestic inquiry that will be conducted. The domestic inquiry will be where you are served with a notice saying you have behaved in certain way and your act is a misconduct in this manner. Please provide an explanation before we arrive at a decision. This is absolutely important. Any company has to do that if they're terminating you for cause. Now, if that domestic inquiry is set up, please consult with the lawyer, and that lawyer can even represent you within the company. And like I said, principles of natural justice, which arise out of Article 21, also apply here. That means that no person whose, let's say, rights you have affected or has alleged that you have acted in certain way cannot sit in judgment in that domestic inquiry. And that you have to be fully heard. By fully heard, you can also get a chance to cross-examine or cross-question the witnesses who have been examined, or any complainant who says that you acted in a certain manner. You can cross-examine that person to prove factually that you have not acted in that way, or what you have done did not amount to a misconduct. So this is something that is to keep in mind. Coming to this next one, discrimination, right? What kinds of discrimination can there be? There can be discrimination on the basis of gender, on the basis of religion, on the basis of caste, on the basis of ethnicity. There can be various forms of even disability. People with disability may be discriminated against. Now, no organization, no matter how small or large, can tolerate discrimination. That is absolutely very, very crucial to understand. They cannot. If anything is documented to be discrimination, they immediately seek to remedy it. So keep that in mind. You have to, if you feel that in any way you are being discriminated against, always document that immediately by writing an email to the HR concerned, to the concerned person in the HR department. Always document it, because discrimination is impossible to prove. So that is why you have to, at the very first instance, document it. What happened? And if the case is genuine and is backed by documentation, let's say you were discriminated for, let's assume that you were discriminated for wearing, a lady from the Muslim community was discriminated for wearing the hijab, let's say. That person, and her work is excellent, her work is at par with what is satisfactory, but this is the only reason why she feels discriminated against, and this has happened a lot of times, and the company has not taken any steps to remedy that situation. Such a person can approach the civil court and file for damages, and whatever suffered, that that will be remedied and will be rectified, because the courts generally, in an idealistic situation, do not tend to side with the employer in cases of documented discrimination. That is absolutely important and crucial. So that is why you have to document everything that happens if you feel discriminated against. Do not be afraid. Yes, you should not be afraid to pursue legal options. I know that the image of lawyers in the society may not be the best, but always, no matter how bad the image is, when you feel that there is something that is affecting your work, is affecting your position, is affecting your existence within a company, always approach a lawyer and discuss with that lawyer, consult with him, to at least know what legal options are available to you, what you have that you can pursue, where you stand, how strongly you stand, because each case, each scenario will be completely different. So please keep this in mind. Moving on to the last one, this is something that is extremely sensitive, and each company has taken, I know several companies who have taken a lot of steps to cover this one, is sexual harassment, before which I just want to see. Can we CC our personal mail ID while sending mail in any such cases? Yes, definitely. You have to write from your, not personal mail ID. You have to write from your own company organization's mail ID. But if you CC it, the company may view it as a threat that you may, go and consult with a lawyer, etc., etc. So to avoid that, you write from your official ID and forward that mail to your personal ID later after that. So I think that should cover it. You can forward it. That would be much better, even for the reasons of documenting it. No, I understand BCC. I'm saying that once you write the mail to your human resources department, you can just forward it to your personal mail ID or to any other mail ID if you have a lawyer you have already spoken to. So coming to sexual harassment, the most people don't understand what is sexual harassment. Sexual harassment can only be of women, can only be done in certain ways, etc., etc. is the general thinking. I'll tell you exactly how sexual harassment works within organizations and how deep it is to understand what kinds of behaviors should be totally avoided. Okay. Yes. Now, sexual harassment can be any behavior which is direct or implied. By implied, I mean passing of any comment or listening to any kind of music which is sexually, targeted, or in any way or form by writing something on your desk, by passing a chit, by doing anything, or acting out in a certain way which is not direct but is implied. This is covered as sexual harassment, direct or implied. Now let us see what all the acts which fall into sexual harassment. Physical contact or advances. You're talking to your female colleague and she's sitting at her chair. You keep your hand on her shoulder while looking at the computer in a suggestive manner. And if that is unwelcome, I have underlined the word unwelcome, then that is absolutely sexual harassment, just touching that person. A demand or request which is direct for sexual favors, this is clear enough. Sexually colored remarks, showing pornography, or any other unwelcome physical, verbal, or non-verbal. Even a wink has been held to be a case for sexual harassment. The definition is extremely wide. It is inclusive. When you see the last portion, it says any other unwelcome physical, verbal, or non-verbal conduct. This leaves room to include anything which may be unwelcome to a colleague of the female gender. That is why any behavior that can give cause to such an issue should be avoided. It should be well thought of, and the behavior should be absolutely and within your religious confines. I am a student of religion as well, and I can tell you, if you follow what is the dictate of your religion, there is no room for any case of sexual harassment to arise on either side. That is something that is to be kept in mind. Now, see, any act that happens that I have explained to you what sexual harassment is, during the work or performance of any work-related activity. If you are deputed to go to X company, to X place, X location, and on the way you misbehave, or something happens to you on the way, that is again considered to be sexual harassment. Any acts committed, like I said, traveling to work, etc., is covered. Now, who can harass someone sexually? Co-workers, subordinate workers, managers, members of top management, consultants, contractors, any other person employed, retained, contracted by, in any way related to the victim's workplace. That is something to be kept in mind. Anyone, it may be a third-party contractor, somebody who is a guest at your company, somebody from the top management, anyone. That is why this has been included there, is because there is a general perception that top managers, the top management, the board of directors, etc., have a free way with what they demand, what they ask, etc. But that is totally not true. The law covers that any act which is even implied can be considered to be sexual harassment. So a woman is accorded full protection, and no act is left uncovered. So any other act such as molestation, outraging the modesty of a woman, voyeurism, stalking, rape, or any other attempt to commit such acts, these are offense under the Indian Penal Code. Now, any of this happens in a company, it moves from the confines of being just sexual harassment to a full-blown crime under IPC. So in such cases, the organization is mandated to file a police complaint through the victim for any of these accusations against any of the co-workers or subordinate workers, etc., that she may have a complaint against. This is absolutely important. All of these are covered under the IPC and not covered under sexual harassment. So sexual harassment is completely different from this. That is why it is so minute and so detailed. So I hope everybody has understood this. Yes, this I just covered. Any third person, any third party who has even visited the organization, the company, and any sexual harassment has been committed, the management must provide a reasonable assistance, must help and support the victim in seeing that complaint, seeing that action to its logical conclusion. Now, moving on to what can be done if that happens. The victim must immediately approach the HR in writing, and you must understand that there is a special enactment, a special law for this. It is called the Sexual Harassment at Workplace Prevention Act. It's called the Posh Law, Prevention of Sexual Harassment, which was passed in 2012. As soon as a complaint is made to the HR, the company should constitute an internal committee which will have external members, and a woman is supposed to be a president of that. Again, when that internal committee is conducting an investigation and inquiry into the acts based on the complaint, principles of natural justice must be followed. That is something that is absolutely crucial. So I hope the three major issues that employers face within organizations I have covered, that is termination, discrimination, and sexual harassment. Now, moving on to the penultimate point of our session, a few points of advice I have. When we are living in a democracy, and there is democracy exercised at macro levels, at micro levels, even within a company, there is all sorts of democracy or a right to dissent, etc., that may be exercised. But please keep in mind that it is not just the law, the rules, etc. So this has been explained very well by the ruler of Oman, the crown prince, I think Mr. Hamad is. Democracy is not just constitutional and legislative rules. It is a culture and practice of adhering to the law and respecting human rights principles. So that you should keep in mind. Human rights, anything which affects somebody's right to live with dignity, cannot be affected under democracy. That is something that you should always keep in mind. Like I said at the beginning of this session, you should any person who aspires to live a full and a well-rounded life as an employer, employee, or as a citizen must always be aware of what is happening, and do not I stress on this, I cannot insist on this enough, watch TV news in today's day and age, because that is nothing but propaganda. Always analyze anything that you first hear or read or get to know from someone, that even if that someone is someone you trust, do not ever accept that at face value. Always do your own research, however slight. It takes you 2 minutes. Everybody is equipped with a smartphone these days with a 4G connection. Always check if that is truthful, if that is something that is correct, and if there are any disputed versions of that available, of whatever piece of information that is you here. You should always learn to be articulate, both in your social living as well as in your corporate living. Always stand up. Stand up if you see something that is wrong that is happening to you or to your neighbor, to the next person. Always stand up, and you have to be articulate but very polite. Please keep that in mind. Nothing is achieved when somebody pretends to be Sunny Deol or any other person with anger and with flourish. No, you have to be articulate, you have to be polite. That is what will get things done. I think I've covered that. Before moving to the careers that are available in law, if anyone has any questions, we can discuss this, and then I'll come to CA and RC if somebody wants to hear that for 5 minutes. having signed an agreement with employer that the notice period will be these many months and may change, that this is a bonded labor work, and can this be overturned by leaving early without serving notice, and ask for all your service documents. Shahzad bhai, one thing I'll tell you, bonded labor is not anymore legal. What is now legal is called contract labor, and contract labor is something that I'm sure you are not a contract laborer. When somebody has a clause for notice, please go through that clause very carefully. There will be two options given to you. One is you either serve the notice period, be it of 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, etc., or in lieu of that, you please pay up X amount. So if you're leaving for business reasons, that is, if you are going to be self-employed, etc., then you need to leave urgently, please pay for that notice period and sign the full release form and then leave. Do not ever violate the notice period if you want to seek further employment, because no other employer will trust you to serve whatever period of work that you will serve with full dedication if you have violated the employment agreement with your previous organization. So don't ever leave without serving notice in either form. Either pay for it or serve the notice. And if you don't do either of this, no organization is going to give your service documents. Please keep that in mind. Just one moment, sorry. The employer sent me overseas without giving an ID card. Can I file a case? I mean, company ID card. If this is an oversight, I don't think you can file a case. Please write to your employer and ask for an ID card, because without which you won't be able to represent yourself as an employee of the company. Please ask for it. If that is being denied, please oppose that and explain to your employer why it is necessary for you to have a company ID card. And only then can you perhaps again escalate it with your HR department. And I'm sure this is not a legal issue. This is something which is administrative, and it will be taken care of. What about a senior employee or manager shouting and verbally abusing a junior employee for mistakes or poor performance? Can any legal action be taken? See, again, like I said, when any action you face, when any act of discrimination that perhaps you face, or if somebody is being abusive or rude to you, don't immediately think of filing cases. Please definitely consult with a lawyer. But the thing that I would advise you here is write to your HR department and explain to them what exactly is happening. If you want to mark your manager, that is at your discretion if you want to do it or you don't do it. But please also stand up for yourself and very politely tell your senior employee or manager that if he or she behaves in this way, after that person has cooled down, please keep that in mind. This is important man management. After that person has cooled down, please approach him or her and tell that person that if such behavior is continued, it will be difficult for you to, work in such an atmosphere, and that you may have to then escalate and take it forward. Don't say it as a threat. Don't, in any way appear that you're going to do XYZ things against him, because that will again trigger that person. Please politely explain to them that that behavior is wrong, and also approach your HR department. That is very important. And only then, if it is not resolved, you can then take it forward. I own a small business and I have customers who are defaulters. I would like to know law that protects my rights and serves me. I would want to know what business and what kind of defaulting happens. Perhaps we can have a personal conversation on this. I will share my email ID and you can connect with me, and we can take it forward. What has to be done when employer doesn't like to leave that employee knowing that he would lose the new job from new employer, tries to serve the notice period mandatorily by saying that we have signed in for bond when employer doesn't like to leave? See, like I said, again, the notice period cannot, there is no bonded labor. Bonded labor has been abolished. Whatever you sign is a contract. They may call it a bond, they may call it a memorandum of understanding, etc. You are given an option to pay for your notice period or serve out the notice period. Whichever is most convenient to you, you can do that. But if the terms of that contract are extremely unfair and biased in favor of the company, then you can consider legal options. You can file a suit for specific performance of release, asking the employer to release you because you're willing to pay for it, and the terms of the notice period are unfair. So that can be done. Many companies delay in giving salary to employees. Sometimes it takes 2 to 3 months to clear salary. How to overcome this problem? See, that this problem, I think, has been compounded with the current pandemic. I think most companies are facing this problem. You can make clear that you please write to your manager and to the finance department, the HR department, etc., that it is important for you to be paid on time every month, and that you have responsibilities, etc., to take care of, and that delay in paying salary will not earn the company any brownie points. And definitely, yes, legal options are available if the payment period is too long and the company does not provide an explanation for it. You can file a suit for damages, and definitely you can get relief immediately. What can be done if overseas police randomly stops? No, there was another question. So contract is for certain months, right? After that, it becomes void. Am I correct? Yes. Your contract is for certain months. After which it becomes, not void. It terminates. It ends there. But the rights and the duties and obligations that were imposed on each party during that contract period go beyond. For example, if you had to do X, Y, Z things under the contract, and you did not do it for the entire period of contract, the company or you have a right to enforce that even after the period of contract, because that was supposed to be obligatorily done. That was supposed to be mandatorily done. If you did not do it, then you have to go ahead and the contract lapses. Even then, that can be enforced. That is something that is to be kept in mind. And one other thing, if there is a clause in the contract which says that this X clause does not survive after termination, then that cannot be enforced. That is why reading the contract and consulting with a lawyer if necessary is absolutely important. A good lawyer. What can be done if overseas police randomly stops and checks mobile apps like Facebook and WhatsApp? See, I know that if you have to go to the US, you have to submit your Facebook password, your Instagram password, your Twitter password, and that is a mandatory rule in that country for travelers. And there is nothing much that we can do because that is for the safety and security of that particular country. And that particular country's cops have the rights to check travelers' personal phones, mobiles, accounts, that is Facebook, WhatsApp, etc. So if you want to be safe, perhaps delete or deactivate your Facebook account before you travel to such country, and then reactivate it when you get back. That is all that I can say. Or if you have something, I'm sure there should be nothing that should be hidden, but different cultures perceive things differently. Perhaps you can delete all your messages or something that you can reasonably think that it may cause controversy. So I hope I've answered that. Now, moving on to the next slide. What can you do as a lawyer? First of all, when do you study law? There are two options available to you. One is when you pass out of second PUC or the 12th standard, you can do an integrated course called the BA LLB or the BBA LLB or the BCom LLB, which is combined instead of being 6 years, because there are two degrees that you get here. One is for the non-law and one is the law, that is BA or BBA or BCom, and the LLB. So it is integrated into 5 years instead of it being a 3-year plus 3-year course. So that is something that you can definitely think about after your 12th standard PUC. And or there is another option if you are a graduate, even if you hold masters or even a doctorate, you can still enroll yourself as a legal student, that is a law student before a good law school, in a good law school for LLB, and you can get your degree of just LLB with your graduate degree that would already be available with you. That will be a 3-year course. So these are the two options to study. The first thing that you can do after passing out as a lawyer and enrolling yourself with the bar council, the concerned bar council, is that you can be a practicing attorney. You can be a lawyer wearing the band, the court, before the court, and fight for people in criminal law, in civil law, in constitutional law. Under civil law, there are so many branches. There is arbitration, there is maritime practice, there is real estate, lawyering that happens. All of these things fall under civil law, and that is something that you can do. The next is that you can be a corporate or an in-house lawyer. You can join a law firm which deals with corporate matters. You can, join a company to be a lawyer within the company itself. These options are available. You should be well versed in all the basics, apart from being a specialist in something. That also tremendously helps you. You need not have to do LLM or anything after that, but it is necessary for you to carve a niche for yourself in the first 2 years of your career as a specialist of X subject, be it criminal law, be it arbitration, be it contracts law, be it drafting, pleading, anything that you are reasonably good at. So that is something that you should keep in mind. The other thing that can be considered after passing out is judiciary. Definitely is most important for the country and the legal community at large to have good judges. After passing out, you can write exams for munsif courts. You can be munsifs, that is munsif judges, or after certain period of practice, let's say 3 years before you can write for a magistrate, and 7 years before you can write the exam for district judges. So once you attain that period of practice, and if you want to serve the community as a judge, then definitely judiciary is an option, because all judges are lawyers. Please keep that in mind. You can also be an academic. You can be, research, public policy, and other think tanks require well-read and well-educated, highly accomplished lawyers. They look for them. That is something that you can definitely consider. And the research grants, the academic grants that funds the stipends, etc., are extremely lucrative. So that is something that can also be looked at. Then coming to central government, state government, and armed forces. Central government, you can even write the CSAT exams, that is the UPSC, IAS or IPS, etc. And trust me when I say this, somebody with a knowledge of law and looking the world from the lens of how each law or rule or regulation affects, can be a thorough administrator. So writing UPSC exams with the right mindset can lead you to success and let you work in areas which are absolutely crucial, both at the central and the state level. Or you can also be appointed as the central government attorney or the state government attorney before the courts. That also happens. You can even be an advisor to the central or the state government, a legal advisor. That also works. So these are the options available under the state and the central government. Under armed forces, there is a separate corps. When I say corps, not the like the National Cadet Corps, there is something called the Judge Advocate General Corps. It's called the JAG. So you can write the exam as a lawyer for the armed forces. I've been fortunate enough to know a few people who are JAGs, and there within the armed forces, be it Army, Navy, or Air Force, you get to argue before the court, the martial law tribunal that sits, to decide whether somebody is committing treason, somebody has gone AWOL, somebody is doing X, Y, Z. So, excuse me. So somebody who wants to pursue that, a career in uniform, law also gives that person an opportunity to do that. The last one is, activism. You can definitely, like I mentioned, Mr. MC Mehta, Mohan Chand Mehta, he was an environmental law activist, and his work has done great, and contributed in a great manner to advance good environmental living in the country. You can work for an NGO, you can support all sorts of causes through NGOs, be it citizenship, be it burn victims, be it rape victims, be it People who have been abandoned, old people who have been abandoned, young people who have been abandoned. NGOs work in all sorts of ways. You can work for such an NGO. And politics is the last option. More than 90% of legislators who speak in the parliament are lawyers. From our community, we should be fortunate that we have people who speak in the parliament, be it from Kerala or from Telangana, etc. And it is very important uh, to speak with nuance, to speak with great weight if you know the law, and if politics is something that you want to get into. So law will be a great option. So I think I have covered everything. If anyone has any questions, I do not remember correctly, but I think there is a way to defend your own case, attending, passing a small exam of 2-3 months. Is this something only for that case, or can be lifelong? No, no. There is no exam that you have to appear after a course of 2-3 months. Definitely, you have a right to defend yourself. In fact, I can give you an example. Afzal Guru, if you have heard of this case, he was hung for the attack on the parliament. He defended his own case in the trial court because no lawyer was willing to represent him. You can defend yourself in any case. It is called a party in person. Party in person can appear and defend himself in any matter: consumer matter, criminal matter, civil matter, constitutional matter, case before the Supreme Court. But trust me, that is highly, highly not advised. I would not recommend anyone to represent themselves, because you need to, when you represent a case before the court, it is extremely important to keep the facts in one hand and the law in one hand, and present an amalgamation of this to the court. And that amalgamation has to serve your best advantage. And the consequences, the causes, etc., have to be kept in mind. So this has to be done with a full study and research, and that is extremely important. I can give you an example of Mr. Shahid Azmi, who was shot dead. There was also a movie on him, Shahid. He was arrested under the anti-terrorist laws, but he studied to be a lawyer in the jail. He passed his bar exam in the jail, and he defended himself, was acquitted, and then he practiced to bring out people who have been falsely accused of these cases. So it is extremely important for you to be aware of your laws, and that is very important that you attend a law school before you practice. That is something that I would like to say here. Now, if we have 5 minutes, I can maybe speak on CAA and RC. Somebody had a request for that. See, the thing is, yes, the thing is, one thing to keep in mind is we are all natural citizens of the country. Now, under the Constitution, how citizenship is accorded to you is whether you are born in this country, or if you have traveled and naturalized yourself in this country, or if your parents did that, they traveled and they naturalized. And what was the date of cutoff? It was 1950, when the partition, etc., happened, and a lot of okay, somebody has a long question. I'll definitely answer this after I finish on the CA and RC. So once you are accorded citizenship, it cannot be taken away. It is absolutely important to remember that. Now, there are certain criteria that, like I said, either you are born in this country. If you are born in this country, then there are certain tests. If both your parents were born in this country, if one of your parents was born in this country, and if your grandparents were born in this country, that means you are a legacy citizen. So that is something that you can keep in mind. Now, what the CAA NRC, NRC will keep it aside for now. What the CAA does is it amends it to simply say that any person belonging to Hinduism, Sikhism, Christianity, Buddhism, Jainism from Pakistan, Bangladesh, or Afghanistan can come to India, and citizenship will be accorded to. Now, keep this in mind. They're enabling minorities, so to say, in Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, because these three countries are taken to be a Muslim majority countries. So they have said that minorities in these countries are free to come to India and seek for citizenship. So this is an enabling legislation. Now, why this was fought tooth and nail is, in Assam, there is something that is called the National Register of Citizens that is going on, or went on, and lists are being published, were published, etc. So in the NRC, the rules say that anyone who is not a citizen has to be put into detention centers, etc. Under those rules, the one of the and also in the CA amendment, one of the amendments that was made is who shall be a citizen. Now, if you there are certain dates of cutoffs. I'm sorry, I don't remember them offhand, but there are certain days of years of cutoff. If you are born after that particular year, then you have to show that either either your father or your mother was also a citizen of India, or if you're born after certain, again, like I said, 1982 I think is one date, 2005 is another date, where between these years, if you are born, you have to show both of your parents were also born in India, and your grandparent, one of your grandparents was also born in India, etc. So what happens is, let's say for our fathers or our grandfathers' generations, if they are alive now, it will be extremely impossible for them to show that their father or their grandfather was born in India. They can show their own birth certificates, perhaps. They can show even legacy land documents, perhaps. But they cannot show that their fathers or grandfathers were born here. So when that need arises, the criteria for you to be a citizen is for you to prove your grandfather or father to be a citizen too, which may be an impossible task. So that means you can also be a non-citizen. Your father also can be a non-citizen, and the rest of your family also becomes non-citizens by this criteria of you having to prove the previous generation's citizenship. It was challenged before the Supreme Court, and there have been no orders made. And because there were, these protests, such amazing protests that happened, that it was all held back, and hopefully that won't be brought into the Parliament. The NRC, the CAA has been brought in. It is an act now. It is under challenge before the Supreme Court. No hearings so far have happened in detail. So that is those challenges are pending. Hopefully, let us hope. One thing that I would always like to say is the price of freedom and the price of rights is eternal vigilance. Now you have to always keep your eyes open, always fight for your rights, always be ready. Only when your rights and freedoms can be protected. And if NRC comes to pass, take it from me that it is impractical. It cannot be done. The expenditure is far too huge. The infrastructure needed to carry out the process is extremely, impossible. The government of the day is only doing it to induce fear. Do not be afraid. Always stand up for yourself. Know your rights, and please buy a pocket constitution. You will understand more. I'll read the questions and I'll answer them. Sorry for asking this out of topic question. Under what clause the leave paid casual leave are counted in an employee period? Quite a while I am noticing in my company that something happened. That few of team members are not allowed to take leave of more than 2 days. If they want, they are forced to ask to submit on what reasons. So in terms of leave, I'll tell you, any workman, at different levels, there are different leaves. Any workman is entitled to all the national and the state holidays and 12 days of casual leave. Okay, this is the bare minimum, and that is, I think, what is followed by most companies. Some people also have and sick leave also. That person is also entitled to certain sick leave. Excuse me, I have a cough. One thing that needs to be kept in mind is, the minimum number of leaves available to you under law and the policy of the company in giving them to you. Now you may have in a year, let's assume you have 24 leaves, all put together. You have 24 leaves. Now you have accumulated all of that for December that you're going to take leave in one go. Under law, you're obligated to do that. You can do it. but trust me, you lose face with your organization, because in one go you're trying to go through the entire leave list, perhaps go on a long vacation. If you have built a relationship and have explained to your manager, your line manager, your HR person, all of that, and you have explained to them why this is necessary, you're getting married, or you're traveling, or you're doing XYZ things, yes, that can be acceptable. But what I would suggest is always try and take leaves whenever it is required. If a company says that more than 2 leaves you have to give a special reason, etc., please give the reason that you have to take the leave for. I don't see that should be a problem, but no company can not give you the minimum number of leaves that is available to you under law. That is clear. Okay. You joined a bit late and you would like to know on terminations. I will share the PPT. See, basically termination can be for cause or for non-performance. If it is for non-performance, then it will be very difficult for you to recover from that and cross that hurdle back to reinstatement. If it is for cause, there has to be a domestic inquiry that has to be conducted by the company. You can even represent yourself or be represented by a lawyer. It has to be in writing. Every domestic inquiry session will have to be recorded. All of these particulars are there. But please bear in mind, if you have been terminated for non-performance, then there is very little you can do as an employee. One thing that I would again like to mention here is termination. There is a process that has to be followed, and most companies have to do it. That is, they have to file certain papers with the labor department, and once a person is terminated, this termination does not apply to contract laborers or consultants or agents or contract in any way contracted with the company. So that you have to please keep in mind. This only applies to employees on roll. I hope I've answered all questions, and I hope you enjoyed this session. If anybody wants to ask any more questions, I suppose.
Yeah, mashallah, it was very informative and we're getting very good feedback. Mashallah, Naqi Sahib, it was an excellent presentation. And so many new things we came to know, because this is something that we never go through in our work environment.
Right,
So it
right.
was really out of knowledge and for all of us, mashallah.
Thank you
We'll
so
take
much.
care of. So we'll take care going forward about the laws also,
Please.
inshallah. So the recording will be available. I have given the link where we have the recording of all the previous webinars also. So inshallah, in a couple of days, I'll try to put it up at tinyurl.com/mfird. So there, hopefully it will land up, and we have the previous webinars also. And we, inshallah, will keep on having such webinars on weekend. So request you all of you to keep join and bring your colleagues, your friends, your relatives also, so that they also benefit from it. And if anyone of us would like to impart and share your knowledge, your expertise with the rest of us, feel free to connect with the team so that we can schedule your webinar also, because all of us are expert in our own domains, and it's really helpful to share your knowledge and give back to the society. So if Naqi Sahib, if you can share your email ID or your phone number, if you are convenient with that, you can put in the chat box.
Yes, I'm not. I've shared my email ID and my phone number. If please text me if I don't receive calls. I may be on other calls, etc. And I'll definitely get back to you. And I'll answer to any email that is sent to me. That is not an issue at all.
Yeah, it's much better to message or email.
Yes,
it's more convenient. Okay, so with this, we come to a finish. And thanks to all of you, and especially to Syed Naqi Sahib for taking out his time on a weekend for all of us, and also to our brother Yunus, who helped us arrange this excellent webinar.
Great.
So,
Thank you.
thanks.
You also, Saif Saab, and to Yunus, who has helped me set up this presentation. And thank you for
sorry for
having me. It was a pleasure.
sorry for last question. Actually, I was little late.
No problem. No problem.
Yeah. So one more question last. Like recently, I like two of my cousins are completed the LLB graduation. So
Okay.
this year they will be starting practicing from our district also. So how the startup level candidates can start their journey, or how they can start their career? Is there anything you can give towards the community, or how they can serve the community, or the
Yes.
main? Yeah,
Yeah.
these things you can just highlight so that I can pass them and they can also. I told them to join, but something not good. It seems.
One important thing is for any young lawyer who has just passed out of law school to join a very good senior lawyer's chamber, senior lawyer's office, because without learning what the law is, you cannot do anything. Once you start learning, is when you can start helping. And simultaneously, I would also definitely encourage your relatives, your cousins, to be a part of organizations such as MFIRD and other NGOs which are helping people in many different ways. So that exposure is absolutely also very important. And when you start appearing before the courts and learning from the senior, an amalgamation of these two things in the coming years, maybe in 3 or 4 years, they will be a real asset to both themselves, to the courts, as well as to the community. That is the one piece of advice I have for them.
Yep. Sure. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nafisa. We'll close the session now.
Sure.
Jazakumullah.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.